What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and today I am here. There's no practice or anything. We don't have practice again until Wednesday, which will start our joint practices with the Bears before Saturday's first preseason game for us. But I'm here because the Dolphins have released their depth chart ahead of next week and ahead of that game. So I want to take a look at that. We are also going to, I happen to have access to a Miami Herald article still for this month, surprisingly enough. So Barry Jackson put out some, let's go ahead and switch to that. Barry Jackson actually put out some observations that we're going to go ahead and read through. And then I'm actually going to put the depth chart up on the screen, in place of the article here, and we'll take a little bit closer look at that. Where Miami Dolphins starting battles stand and depth chart reveals after 10 practices. Miami Dolphins released a depth chart on Monday that in some ways confirms and in some ways contradicts what has been witnessed in 10 days of practice. Okay, so let's see what he's got to say. A look at several competitive starting positions. Free safety. Jason McCourty spent the first 6 practices as the first team starting safety. Javon Holland has been in that role for the past 3 practices, and the production has been sterling. 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, and a pass breakup. Let's see. The depth chart lists McCourty as the starting safety with Holland backing him up. It lists Eric Rowe as the other starting safety with Brandon Jones on the second team. Slot cornerback Justin Coleman, the former Lions Seahawks veteran, has remained ahead of Nick Needham for the entire training camp. The depth chart no longer even lists Needham as a nickel corner behind Coleman, even though he played there all of last year. Instead, Jamal Perry, who said last week that he's now a safety, is listed as the second team corner behind Coleman. Okay, so that's interesting. Needham and Noah Igbenogany are listed as the second team boundary corners behind Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, with Terrell Bonds and Javaris Davis behind them. Edge rush, when Miami begins in base defense, Andrew Van Ginkel is the clear front runner to start at one of those spots and is listed as the only first team outside linebacker on the depth chart. Before his lower body injury that has sidelined him 11 days, Jalen Phillips looked to be making a case to win the other outside linebacker job ahead of Vince Biegel and Brennan Scarlett and others when the team opens in base defense and with a combined 7 linemen and linebackers. But the depth chart lists Phillips third on the depth chart in his linebacker position. Behind both Van Ginkel and Brennan Scarlett, who has had a very good camp. Jerome Baker and Benardrick McKinney are listed as first-team inside linebackers as expected, with Duke Riley and Sam Aguavion on the second team, and Calvin Munson and Vince Biegel, more of an edge guy, as the third-team linebackers behind Baker and McKinney. Defensive end position next to Emmanuel Ogbah and Raekwon Davis. Zach Sealer has opened with the first team more often than Christian Wilkins during training camp, but Wilkins was the first team on Sunday and listed as the starter on the depth chart. I mean, that's interesting. Okay, I guess. Adam Butler, that's a contradiction to what we've seen in practice then, because, Wilkins has been primarily with the second team and Zach Sealer has been running with the first team. Adam Butler, John Jenkins, and Sealer are the second team defensive linemen. Although, to be fair, it is expected that there is going to be a rotation of those first and second team guys on the defensive line. So, let's see. Tight end, it might surprise you to know that Durham Smythe, often considered the team's number 2 tight end, actually has started nearly twice as many games as Mike Gesicki the past 2 years, 27-14. Last season, Smythe started 13, Gesicki 9. Curiously, Smythe was listed third on Monday's depth chart behind Gesicki and Adam Shaheen. Sathan Carter was 4th and Hunter Long tied with Carl Tucker for 5th team. Long was carted off during Sunday's practice, but the Dolphins and his agent declined to say if the injury is very serious or if he will play this season. Just real quick, obviously we have to wait until there's official details, but based off of everything that I've heard and seen and the information out there, my inclination is to say is that it's at least a relatively serious injury. Hopefully it's not something so serious as like a tear to an ACL. It's definitely, it seems to be pretty definitively a knee injury. That's what pretty much everybody's been saying from what I can see. I mean, it's all speculation, but the consensus seems to be that it's a knee injury, and from everything that I've seen and read and heard and whatever, it seems to be relatively serious. Hopefully it's not a tear of a ligament. Hopefully it's, at worst just like a sprain, and he'll be back sooner rather than later. But obviously we have to wait and see what the official word is on that, and who knows when they're gonna give it to us. I mean, I'm sure something will come out relatively soon though. I don't know, probably in within the next couple days, I would think, because I mean they can't just keep that quiet forever. Anyway, Smythe has been with the starters most of camp. Gesicki has been out a week on the COVID-19 list. Wide receiver Devontae Parker and Will Fuller are obviously starters when healthy, but Albert Wilson's exceptional camp has created a fascinating battle with Jalen Waddle for first-team slot responsibilities. When Parker and Fuller have been out, Wilson and Waddle and Mac Hollins have received the most first-team work. The depth chart had Parker, Wilson, and Fuller as the starters, and Jakeem Grant, Waddle, and Hollins on the second team, and Lynn Bowden, Robert Foster, and Allen Hurns on the third team. So, look, man, I like Waddle as a player. Again, I would not have made that selection, but let's keep it real. So, when they moved up from 12 to 6 to pick Jalen Waddle, right? They traded with the Eagles. They effectively paid 2 first-round picks to take a slot wide receiver, and I believe he's going to get plenty of playing time, and he may actually even end up starting it, and be first on the depth chart. But they paid 2 first-round picks to move up and get a slot receiver at number 6 that is currently second on the depth chart. Take that for what you will. But it really just goes to the Dolphins. The point I make, with that, and when I think about that situation is the Dolphins' ability to prioritize, to maximize on their resources, to evaluate, I mean, the player, again, Waddle's fine as a player, but and really in this case, it's just prioritizing, They prioritized a slot receiver over an offensive lineman, because I would have took Penei Sewell, right? So, see how that goes. Malcolm Perry, Isaiah Ford, and Kirk Barrett are on the 4th team. Starting left guard, Liam Eichenberg has been in that position for 7 consecutive practices and is thus the front runner, though offensive line coach Lemuel Jean-Pierre said he's uncertain if Eichenberg will stay at guard. Jesus Christ. He's first on the depth chart at left guard with Solomon Kindley's second team. Starting right tackle Jesse Davis has been in that position for 7 consecutive practices and is first team on the depth chart. FYI, Adam Pankey and Jonathan Hubbard are listed as the top backup offensive tackles behind Austin Jackson and Davis. Starting center Michael Dieter has been the first team center all 10 days of practice and is first team on the depth chart. Matt Skura second and Cameron Tom third. This and that. Myles Gaskin is first at running back as expected, with Malcolm Brown second, Salvan Ahmed third, and Patrick Laird fourth, Jordan Scarlett fifth, and Garrett Doak sixth. So our rookie 7th round pick is buried on the depth chart, which is not totally unexpected because he is a bit of a project. Jermaine Illuminor, who started 8 games at tackle for the Patriots last season, hasn't been a factor at tackle in camp and is listed as the second team right guard behind Robert Hunt. Grant is listed as the first team punt kickoff returner ahead of Waddle. I mean, that's good. I hope they don't. I don't want them to even use him, Waddle, that is, in the return game, as you guys know. Grant was 3rd in the NFL punt return average last season. Waddle was an elite returner at Alabama, but he is listed on the depth chart, at that position. So, whatever. The Dolphins waived long snapper Rex Sunahara on Monday. So they waived him yet again after just bringing him back in. But again, the narrative, with the changing of the the facts here. It's again a good sign for, what's his name? Blake Ferguson. At least for the time being. I mean, I saw Omar Kelly had quote tweeted that transaction, was like they're going to re-sign him again soon. So maybe they will. Who knows? All right, now let's actually take a quick look at the depth chart itself. So it's a little small. I mean, this is from Twitter. I can't really enlarge it, unfortunately. And I feel like it's a little blurry. But let's see. We'll go here from top to bottom. So you see wide receiver here is Devontae Parker with Jakeem Grant. And then, is that Fuller? Oh, or Foster. I was going to say, because Foster is listed as first team. So Foster, Merritt, and then Kai Loxley. So Parker, Grant, Foster, Merritt, and then Kai Loxley. I know it's kind of hard to see. Let's see. But then you have left tackles Austin Jackson with Hubbard, and then Larnell Coleman behind him. Then you have, let's see, Liam Eichenberg as the left guard with Kinley and Kieros, Derval Kieros Nito behind him at left guard. That's who I thought it was. And then center is Michael Dieter, Matt Skura, Cameron Tom. Right guard is Robert Hunt with Illuminor behind him. And then who's behind him? Oh, Robert Jones. Okay, and then at right tackle you have Jesse Davis, Adam Pankey, Timon Paris, and then what's the dude's first name? Trevor Mars? I can't remember his first name, but anyway, something Mars, fourth team. Tight end is Gesicki, Shaheen, Smythe, Carter with Hunter Long and Carl Tucker, fifth team, and Chris Myarick and Carson Meyer as sixth team. Running back, Myles Gaskin, Malcolm Brown, Salvon Ahmed, Patrick Laird, Jordan Scarlett, Garrett Dokes. Quarterback is Tua with Brissett and then Reed Sinnett, as expected. Wide receiver, the slot wide receiver is Albert Wilson to start ahead of Jalen Waddle. So that is interesting, as I mentioned. Then Lynn Bowden and Malcolm Perry behind him. And then the other outside wide receiver is Will Fuller to start, Mac Hollins, Alan Hearns, and Isaiah Ford. Obviously, though, too, Will Fuller is not going to be there for the first game against the first game of the season against the Patriots. So it'll be interesting to see who actually starts there. Does Mac Hollins just move up, or? And obviously we'll have to wait and see how the roster shakes out, because by the time the season starts, this depth chart will be smaller because there won't be as many players. You're not going to have sixth team players. You're not going to have, tight ends on sixth team. It's not going to exist, right? And fifth team. So let's see. Alan Hearns, Isaiah Ford. All right, and then for the defensive end, one. So this is has five. Yeah, see, this depth chart lists, though. I was gonna say it's a 3-4, but this has three linemen, 3 linebackers, and then 5 defensive backs, 2 safeties, 3 corners. So this is I believe, I'm admittedly not all that great with formations and stuff, but I do believe this is what would be the nickel package as far as what the depth chart lists. I could be wrong about that, but let's go. So for defensive end 1, you have Ogba, which is expected with Adam Butler, and then Jason Strowbridge behind him. The other defensive end spot is Christian Wilkins to start at the top, even though Zach Sealer, who is listed as second team, has been practicing with the first team the entire time, with Jonathan Ledbetter and then something Johnson, I don't know his first name, behind him. At nose tackle, you have Raekwon Davis, John Jenkins, and then Benito Jones. Linebacker 1 is Jerome Baker with Duke Riley, Calvin Munson, and Kay Johnson behind him. Then you have Benardrick McKinney as expected in the linebacker 2 spot with Sam McGuavin, Vince Beagle, and Shaquem Griffin. Wow, Shaquem Griffin is listed pretty... I think he actually will make the roster. But he is pretty down on the depth chart there, although he, would move up after the cuts, obviously. But let's see. But who knows? I mean, currently he is listed back there, so maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. And then the third linebacker spot is Andrew Van Ginkel, Brandon Scarlett, Jalen Phillips, and Tyshun Render behind him. Then cornerback 1, well, let's see. So the first cornerback position they have listed on here is actually slot corner. So you have Coleman, Perry, LeBlanc, and then Jalen Askew, and then so Justin Coleman, Jamal Perry, Crevon LeBlanc, and then Jalen Askew are your slot corners, with Byron Jones as one of your outside. Noah is behind him, Terrell Bonds, and then Tino Ellis. And then the other corner is obviously Xavier Howard with Nick Needham, Javaris Davis, and then Trill Williams. The starting safety is Jason McCourty over Javon Holland, even though obviously Holland has been taking the first team reps the past few days, and he could end up, sliding ahead of McCourty. And then Eric Rowe with Brandon Jones, Clayton Fedulum, and Nate Hawley behind him. And then obviously kicker is Sanders, punter and holder are Pilardi, long snapper is Ferguson with Sunahara behind him, even though technically he's not even on the roster at the moment. But they put this out obviously before they cut him too. So let's see. And then kick return and punt return, Jakeem Grant with Waddle behind him. Noah is third team on kick return. Bowden is third team on punt return, with Malcolm Perry fourth on punt return. So there you have it. That is the Dolphins depth chart going into the first preseason game against the Chicago Bears. The Bears. And yeah, so I mean, it'll be interesting. Honestly, though, if you're keeping it real, the depth chart really doesn't mean much of anything. I mean, there are some interesting tidbits to take out of that. Just, really stuff like the fact that Javon Holland has been taking first team reps the past few days in practice, but is listed second team. And, just where some of those guys fall for right now, it doesn't really mean, it's not the end all be all. But here's the thing though, right? So after this first preseason game, we will have to do our first roster cuts. That means teams are going to have to trim from 90 to 85. So we will start to get, after each game, we will start to get a little bit of a clearer picture each time. And then obviously the depth chart will shake out in completely once we, shortly before we get to the regular season. But it'll start to come into a little bit clearer focus after each one of these first couple preseason games. Because after preseason game number 1, we have to cut from 90 to 85. And then after preseason game number 2, we have to cut from 85 down to 80, I believe it is. And then obviously the rest of the way we go from 80 to 53. And then I believe it's a 16-man practice squad, because that carries over from last year. Yeah, so there you have it. That is the depth chart. Just an interesting first look at what we can expect going into this game against the Chicago Bears, and obviously this week's joint practices. And so we'll see how it pans out after that. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to this upcoming week of practice, because we will start to get, a clearer look at this team in general, especially once we have, the preseason game in the books. And again, just to reiterate, my top 3 concerns for this team right now are brain fart, injuries / COVID situation, right? And I tie those together because those equal players that we're missing. that are either not practicing or playing because of COVID or injuries. So the COVID or when it comes to injuries, obviously injuries that could potentially become a factor at some point. So injuries, COVID, that's my number one issue. My number two issue is still definitely the offensive line. It scares the shit out of me, and that's going to be one of the top things that I mean, these are, these three things are going to be the top three things that I monitor. Injuries in general over the course of the entire game, I'm going to be keeping an eye on. But then, the number one, like, football thing that I'm going to be focusing on is that offensive line, to see, especially because the Bears have a, pretty tough defensive front. Now, again, for full context, the playbooks are going to be very vanilla on both sides of the ball. And for both teams, they're also, probably not going to be playing at 100% speed, maybe like 90% or whatever, because it's only a preseason game. And also, the starters are probably only going to get maybe a couple series before they get pulled and they start putting in backups. So, there's probably going to be limited reps, limited action. So it's going to be a very small sample size, but it will be the next, big clue as to what, these players are going to be and this team is going to be. And then, of course, my third biggest concern is the secondary behind, Howard. And so, look, you have Noah and Nick Needham as listed as your second team guys, right? Well, they're going to get some playing time, and we're going to see how they do. Noah's been getting roasted all camp. And look, I got to keep it real. I expect that's probably going to be the case going forward. Because he's just not ready, man. He's just not anywhere near ready. Nick Needham, I think he's overall fine. My biggest concern with him is that he's been kind of up and down, and he tends to get more penalties than I would like. So if he can be more consistent and clean up the penalties, I think he could be a really solid player. Anyway, so that's all I got. That is the first breakdown of the Dolphins depth chart. And yeah, so I'm going to get out of here. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. Of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.